Well, it's good to see everyone. I'm Al Hevens, District Court Judge from the 1st Judicial District in Northeast Iowa. It's about a 3.5-hour trip here for me from the farm to the Judicial Branch building in Des Moines. And I always like to listen to the radio on the way here. And this time I heard a song called I'm From the Country by Tracy Byrd. And I thought, boy, if my application had to have a theme song, I think this is the one that I'd pick. If you've never heard it before, the refrain goes something like this. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody calls you friend. You don't need an invitation. Kick off your shoes, come on in. Yeah, we know how to work and we know how to play. We're from the country and we like it that way. Now, I tell you this, and I was going to sing it to you, and I ran that idea by a friend. And he said, well, the beauty of doing that is you don't have to worry about what you say for the rest of your application. You have lost everyone's vote within the first minute, and you can just do whatever you want. So I didn't sing that, but I did want to say it, because as you can see from paragraph 28 of my application, you'll notice that appellate judges in Iowa can live wherever they want, and we're heavily weighted toward judges who have decided to live in urban areas and who have decided to live in central Iowa. And I think there is some value to having some balance on there, because I don't remember any level of our appellate courts ever being so imbalanced, at least not since 2018. That was the last time that the Iowa Supreme Court was comprised of 7 men and no women. And I think it's fair to say that the people on this commission at that time, and the governor saw that as a problem, and they fixed it. Now, the highest ranking official in the Iowa Judicial Branch is Chief Justice Susie Christensen. And if you ever meet her, you will never find a more zealous advocate for the judicial branch and the people who work in it than Chief Justice Christensen. There's also Justice Dana Oxley, who's known as a consensus builder on the Iowa Supreme Court. That's a very valuable role. As for the Court of Appeals, well, a majority of members of the Court of Appeals are women, and that won't change no matter who fills this vacancy. So no one ever says anymore, our appellate courts have a gender imbalance or they're lopsided, because this commission and the governor fixed that problem. Now, if I'm fortunate enough to be sent on to the next round, I'll be asking the governor to look at the problem, the way I see a problem, of the rural-urban balance and the geographical balance on our appellate courts. But I think it's fair to push back on me a little bit and say, aren't we just picking qualified people here? And does it really matter where anyone lives? What if we just had all people from the same place, but they're all very qualified? And I agree with a sliver of that pushback, and that's you do have to absolutely have qualified people serving as judges at all levels, and that you should never make someone a judge just because of where they live. That would be a bad thing for justice throughout all the state. And I would hope that you look at my background and find that my time as county attorney, the Justice for All columns that I wrote during that time, which I think were kind of innovative, my time in private practice representing clients in all different areas of the law, and now as a district court judge for over 5 years, having written close to 500 opinions in contested cases and only been overturned twice, that I would pass that qualification threshold and that you would find that I am qualified to be sent to the next round. So you do have to have qualified people. But once you pass that qualification threshold, there is real actual value in cases by having someone from a rural perspective and having geographic balance. And let me give you a few examples of that. Consider a criminal case where the defendant has demanded speedy trial and the deadline got missed. And the trial court says, well, the state showed good cause to miss this deadline because we didn't have enough trial dates to get this case in before the deadline ran. If that appeal goes up to a bench of judges who are from urban areas, that may seem like an abuse of discretion, because in urban areas, you got lots of trial dates, you got multiple courtrooms in every courthouse so you can try cases in. There's a lot of resources there. So it seems like really you didn't have enough room to try this case. In a rural area, that is a problem we confront all the time. They maybe get one trial date a month. Sometimes those trial dates are 2 months apart from each other. sometimes you get a half dozen defendants all within 1 week that all demand speedy trial. So that's a real issue that happens, and that rural perspective will be important when that case comes up on appeal. Or consider a custody case where the court rules that, well, these parents can do shared care despite how far away they live from each other. That goes on appeal up to a bench of judges who are from urban areas, and that distance may seem like a long way for someone who's used to having short trips. But in the rural area, windshield time's a part of life. That's just what you do. So that perspective will be valuable. Consider a child support case where the child support payer says, I'm really making the most money I can in this job. That case goes up on appeal, and you get judges who are familiar with what the income and salary levels are in urban areas, but not in rural areas. Maybe that looks like an abuse of discretion. Or as for geographical balance, consider a jury trial that happened during our COVID era. Now, when we did jury trials then, all the jurors had to be 6 feet apart from all the other ones in every direction, so courtrooms filled up fast. And there was a case that happened in the 1st Judicial District where a defendant said, I'd like to have a spectator come in. And the trial court said, no, I think the way this courtroom is set up, we're not going to be able to do that comfortably without making the jurors uncomfortable or perhaps having them hear something they shouldn't hear. So the defendant said, well, you violated my right to a public trial then. So that case goes up onto appeal to an appellate bench that has no judges from the 1st Judicial District on it. And it is a split decision, so there's a majority and a dissent, and both of those opinions talk a lot about how this courtroom was set up and was there enough space. Well, wouldn't it have been good to have someone who's actually practiced in that courtroom, who's tried cases in that courtroom, who kind of has a real world view of how much space did this courtroom really have? Now, does any of this matter, or are these all academic questions? Well, that last case involved a 16-year-old girl and a defendant who was charged under a gang rape statute and a guilty verdict from the jury. And the decision from the appellate court in that case was going to determine whether that 16-year-old girl would have to testify again to everything she just testified to. So I would say that perspective would matter for her. So these are real-life cases, and maybe not every issue in every case is going to have that urban-rural divide or that geographical divide, but it does come up. And when it does come up, I think the hope is that you have a balanced court with lots of perspectives, and maybe a perspective that the court may not already have or may not have enough of. So I do want to open it up for questions, but before I do, I just want to leave you with a thought that if anyone is worried that, oh, he gets this position and then he moves to an urban area, or he moves out of the 1st District and you've ruined everything that you just said. Well, I can tell you, have no fear of that. The most amazing person that I've ever met in my life is my wife, Jillian. She's a dairy farmer, and dairy farmers don't move because those cows aren't moving anywhere. Her family, which are really wonderful people, they've been very welcoming to me. They not only have dairy farm, but they also farm many acres of corn and beans. Those acres of farmland aren't moving anywhere. I've got 4 kids. They're very happy on the farm, where they're in a great school. We love being there. So none of those people are moving anywhere, and thus I'm not moving anywhere because I'm from the country and I like it that way. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. We'll start with Commissioner Picklett.
Hi, Judge.
Hi.
Nice to talk with you again. Thanks for your application. I think we're only allowed one question, so I wanted to ask about your private practice experience, but there's a part of your application that I thought was impactful, and you talked about how your community outreach has made you a better judge. Could you please talk about that some?
Oh, absolutely. One thing that judges need to do is stay in touch with people outside of the legal profession. You go back to what doing Justice for All columns, serving on committees, staying in your community and staying active in my community. I've learned a lot about what citizens think about the law from taking money at a fish fry. They volunteer things. And a lot of times you have a jury trial case, where the lawyers go back and talk to the jurors and they say, how come you didn't ask about this? You didn't ask about this? You didn't ask about this? If all you're doing is talking to other judges and lawyers, you're missing a very, very valuable perspective that you don't get from people. And so I've always tried to not only volunteer for committees, legal committees, but stay active in my community, stay talking to a lot of people, and make sure that I'm getting a lot of different perspectives. And I think that's extraordinarily valuable. It makes me a better judge. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Stanger?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Thanks for being here. I'm curious what they would say would be, what kind of judge you are. So on the Court of Appeals. So you said Justice Christensen is zealous and Justice Oxley is the consensus puller. What would they say about you if you were on the Court of Appeals?
Well, I would hope they say that he's filled some of the attributes that Chief Judge Bauer brought, which again, Chief Judge Bauer is very collegial. He gets his work done quickly. He's got a great work ethic. He's kind of a glue that's keeping that court together on many times. And that's going to be a great loss when he leaves. It's going to be very difficult to fill his shoes. So I would hope that they say he's collegial, he's got a sense of humor, he gets his work done on time, he writes opinions that are easy for anyone to understand, whether they're in the legal profession or not. So I hope that it's all good things that people would want to say, and that's certainly what I would try to do is, try to fill his shoes in any way I could, and to be an ambassador to the First District too. One thing about Chief Judge Bauer, he's very approachable. If you email him, if you call him, he will call you back, and he truly cares. You can tell if you know him. So I would try to follow in those footsteps and have people say, here's someone who truly cares about, and will answer your phone call, will return your email, will help in some way that he can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hoyt?
Hi, Judge. First, thanks for meeting me so early in our interviews. You kind of responded how you would be kind of collegial with the team in a sense. How would you handle if you and another judge maybe have different opinions?
Sure, and we did meet early. When you're married to a dairy farmer, we have a different definition of what early is, but it worked out real well.
Yeah.
So I think collegiality is so important, and really at the heart of collegiality is empathy. So you understand that someone else has a different position and kind of your emotional intelligence to understand where they're coming from, why they feel that way. And I read an interesting study that said people who are just entering the working world, if you ask them what's most important about their job, they will say money, number one. I just want money, I want the highest salary. Ask them 5 years later, their answer changes to workplace culture, that they would be happy to sacrifice money for a better culture. And that's where collegiality comes in. No one says, I've got a great workplace culture, but I don't like any of my coworkers. So you need to be someone who does their part, respect other people, respect their opinions, and you will have differences of opinions, but you have to see the big picture and see the other person who's got that opinion for who they are, someone trying to do the best job they can. And I think that attitude, again, what Chief Judge Bauer set such a great example for, I would try to follow that you have to be independent and stand your ground and not agree just for the sake of agreeing, but when you disagree, always respect the other person.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spees?
Well, the song I had in mind is How You Gonna Keep Them Down on the Farm? I'm intrigued by your notion about the rural-urban imbalance. And is there a danger in a judge with a particular cultural or geographic background supplanting the record with what he or she thinks the culture or the environment was back home?
Well, I think you do have to be cautious of that because you do have to stick to the record, and I think any appellate judge would have to be very understanding of that. But as we've had really good conversations about, sometimes that cold record doesn't have everything. Those records don't have exclamation marks in them. They don't have parentheses, witness crying in them. So sometimes it's more of a deferring to the judge who's on the ground who is seeing that reality, that not I'm substituting my own reality, but I'm giving the appropriate deference to the judge who was on the ground, who did see all of that, who has a better understanding of what these parties are going through, particularly with credibility issues. So I think it's more of a deference to the trial judge than substituting my own opinion of what rural culture might be like, but deferring to those who understand it and on the ground doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hartkoff.
Hi, Judge. Thank you very much for applying. Can you talk about the importance of having empathy as a judge?
It's key. Now, empathy is understanding that both sides are going through something very difficult, and that there's oftentimes valid points that are being made on both sides. If you see a split decision that has a majority and a dissent, whatever side of that you're on, you need to have empathy for the others and empathy to understand that they're coming from a good place and that you've just ended at a different result. Not having empathy, you'll lose a very valuable perspective that every judge needs, which is, again, this is often the only case that these parties are going through, and it's very difficult for them. So to try to understand what they're going through, litigants, attorneys, colleagues, it's important to try to always understand and try to get in their shoes and understand why they're saying what they're saying and doing what they're doing. I think that's at the heart of what any good judge is doing. Thank you.
Commissioner Semmelroth.
So we keep hearing about the 100 written decisions that a Court of Appeals judge is responsible for each year. What is it about your work experience, either in private practice or as a county attorney or as a district court judge, that should reassure us that you can handle that kind of workload?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I'm close to 500 opinions in 5 years, so I'm almost doing kind of a somewhat similar workload, and I'm doing it on my own. I don't have any law clerks or anybody that's helping me do that. My wife works a lot harder than I do, so however harder I can work, I'm still not going to catch her. So she sets the bar really high, and I just try to keep up. So on weekends, having seen it a lot, I find you can write faster. When you get after 100, 200, up to 500, you can crank out an opinion pretty fast if it's an area that you've done many times before. And if not, I can kind of see those coming and know, I need to do work ahead of time to get prepared for this and make sure that I can get my opinions out timely. So that's very important to me. And I think to the whole appellate court bench that everyone's pulling their weight and doing what they're supposed to, and I can promise my full effort for that if I'm appointed. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Commissioner Henderson.
I have no questions, thank you.
Commissioner Roberts.
Thanks. No questions.
Commissioner Hanson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Judge, what do you perceive the impact of self-represented litigants?
Well, we're seeing it more and more in district court. And what I've found has been a good strategy that I've learned over time is to set the expectations at the start of the proceeding, to kind of explain, here's what we're doing, here's the law in this case, so here's the type of information that will be important for me, and here's the type of information that may not be important. And everyone will get the chance to speak, and we have to speak one at a time. I make sure they understand I have a court reporter here who's writing everything down, and you're going to make her job very difficult if you're talking over each other. I'm always cognizant to tell them I'm neutral. I can't give you legal advice, but I can tell you how this process will work and kind of, firmly guide them through the process with an understanding of what I expect. And as opposed to just kind of showing up and saying, okay, go, you can do that with lawyers because they know the process, but with self-represented litigants, a little extra explanation of the process can be very, very helpful for how the whole thing proceeds smoothly after that.
I had a wonderful visit with your court reporter, too.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yep, they're great people. I mean, they do such an important job, and we're running out of them. We had another one leave just recently, and that's a big issue for the judicial branch, but I'm thankful that we have so many ones that are still here, and they do a great job.
Thank you.
And our time is up.
Okay.
So we thank you for your application, Judge, and we wish you all the best.
All right, thank all of you.